Let's talk about some advanced techniques, some tips and tricks to get your best results. There are a lot of guidelines when it comes to tumbling stones, and all they are is guidelines. There's plenty of room to experiment, to find your personal preference on what you like. Tumbling stones is an art form. There's more than one right way to do it, and if you keep at it and you practice, you'll figure out what works best for you. The most important thing to remember is that it's fun. You're doing this to have fun. It's a great activity that you can do on your own. It's even a funner and greater activity to do with children. It is an excellent lesson in what is possible. There are a lot of sites online that you can order rocks that you can tumble in your rock tumbler. But I encourage you to get out in nature, get some fresh air, do a little hiking while you're looking down at the ground, and collect stones while you're out there. You will be amazed by what you might find. Pretty much any state that you live in has got rocks, and it's an excellent activity, a great way to reconnect with nature, to exercise and have some fresh air, is to go out and hunt for rocks. There are different state and county guidelines that need to be followed, so be sure that you know what the guidelines, what the rules are for your area, and always treat the land with respect. I think maybe one of the most important tips I can give you for tumbling stones is that you need to keep records. It'll help you in the future. It'll also help you through your process. So what I like to do, and what we do at the workshop, is every time we start a load, we will document the date that we started it and what grit cycle it's on and what type of stone is in it. And that way we can reference back and know what it is that we're doing. And we update that between each cycle. A lot of times it'll also help us if we have a stone that's found in a certain location and we're going to be tumbling a lot more of it in the future. We have those records and we can go back and we can look and know that that first stage needs to run for 8 days. And it's just a really good reference guide that we use. You want to make sure that all of the stones in your tumbler run are of the same hardness. If you have stones that are softer, they're not going to polish very well and they can damage the final polish of your harder stones. So make sure that you inspect your stones in between each run, each load, and make sure that you pull out the stones that are softer. You need to inspect your stones in between each grit cycle to make sure that there are no broken stones in your drum. If you have a broken stone or one that's chipped, it's going to act as an abrasive and it can scratch your other stones. So make sure that you do that sort, pull the broken ones out and set them aside. You can always tumble them again in your next run, starting with the first stage. So a good blend of stones to run together would be jasper, agate, and petrified wood. Those all fall between a 6.5 and a 7 on the Mohs scale. Other stones that tumble well together would be your jaspers, aventurine, rose quartz, amethyst, tiger's eye. Those all run well together as well. Soft stones that run well together are sodalite and rhodonite. They have the same hardness level, which is somewhere around a 4. So as you're tumbling your stones, if you see some that aren't tumbling very well in your load, chances are they're too soft for what you're running them with, and just pull them out and set them aside to be run later with like stones. Let's talk a little bit about burnishing. When you burnish your stones, it means that you are running them with a little bit of soap after you've rinsed them off. Once you've gotten the grit, the sludge off of them, it's just kind of a nice cleanup stage to remove any residue that maybe you can't see. Burnishing is an optional stage, and one way that you can tell if you need to burnish your stones or not is that you can take a stone that has gone through the final polish, and you can use a t-shirt or a piece of flannel, and you can rub vigorously for 15 to 20 seconds, and that heat, that friction that's generated will help create a shine. And so if that spot that you've been rubbing is shinier than the rest of the stone, you will be able to tell if you need to do that burnishing stage or not. There are several different household products that can be used to burnish your stone. One of the popular ones is the borax soap, the 20 Mule Team. And you would put the borax soap into your tumbler along with your stones and enough water to just barely cover your stones, and you'd put them on the tumbler. Another method for burnishing is the use of ivory soap. You would take a bar of ivory soap and grate it up with a cheese grater. People have found that using fresh ivory soap can be very difficult to grate. So if you leave it out on the shelf for a couple of weeks and then grate it, it's much easier, and the dryness of the soap won't affect the quality of the burnish. Once you've selected the soap that you would like to use for burnishing, you would add a small amount of it to your tumbler drum. The amount that you would use depends on the size of your tumbler. So you put your rocks back into the tumbler drum. It's really important that there's cushion in there when you're doing the burnishing stage after your final polish. So you would want to put maybe some plastic pellets that are fresh and clean and only used for burnishing. You could also use your ceramic pellets that have been cleaned really well after your final polish, because you need to have that cushion. If you don't have enough rocks during the burnishing stage, they're going to beat each other up, and you can lose your polish, you can lose your shine. And you have spent a lot of time getting to that stage, and it would be a shame to blow it at the end. There's different amounts of time recommended for burnishing. It just boils down to personal preference in the end, but I wouldn't do it for any less than 20 minutes. You can run it for 20 minutes to 24 hours, and it will help create a beautiful luster. When you finish the burnishing stage and it's time to clean the soap off of your rocks, it's okay to put that down the drain. There's no sediment, no residue that's going to potentially clog your pipes. But one thing is that if you used the borax as your burnishing medium, don't dump it outside. Don't get it on your grass or in your flower bed, because borax contains boron, and boron will kill your grass and kill your vegetation. So only put the borax down your drain. After each grit cycle, it's very important to thoroughly clean your stones and your tumbler drum. The reason why we do that is that any grit that's left behind will contaminate your next cycle. It can leave behind scratches, it can create a dull finish on your stones when you're trying to get that high gloss finish. So it's really important. What I like to do is that I will take my tumbler drum, hold it over the colander, dump the drum into the colander, and it drains into a bucket. Then I'll take water in my tumbling drum and I'll swirl it around and dump it over the rocks. And I'll do that 3 or 4 times. And what that does is that eliminates a lot of your grit, most of your residue from your drum, and it also starts to flush that residue off of your stones. After you do that, it's safe to take your stones and the drum to the sink, because you're just wiping out that residue that has kind of been left behind. It's not going to clog your sink. It's just a little bit of sludge that's sticking to the edges. It's very important to have your stones clean and your equipment clean before you move on to the next cycle. It's also important that if the power goes out for an extended period of time, say for more than an hour, you're going to want to go and you can shake your tumbler drum. You can move it to all these different angles to make sure that the grit gets redistributed, and then you're set to start your tumbler again. If the power goes out or you have left them sit for any reason, I recommend that you take and you can add a little bit of soap to the load and run it for 15, 20 minutes to try to loosen stuff up. And then I would advise you to wash your stones and to start that cycle again or where you may have left off. That's why record keeping can be important. So you'll know that if you have that power outage that lasted for 5 days, or the dog unplugged your tumbler and it sat there from you don't know how long, you'll give you a good base, a good reference.